Welcome to Prime Time, a show for people in the prime of life. I'm Susan Hoskins, your host. I'm the Executive Director of the Princeton Senior Resource Center. Today we're going to be talking about senior housing options, and my guest is Hillary Murray from Buckingham Place. Welcome, Hillary.
Thanks, Susan, for having me on.
So, one of the questions that we get a lot at the Senior Resource Center is about housing options. Either adult children coming in and saying, I'm concerned about my parent living alone in this big old house and the upkeep is getting to be too much, or older adults themselves saying, you know, I'm lonely here in this place all by myself, I'd like to live someplace else. And so we begin to talk about housing options. And the way that we divide it up anyway is sort of according to what you're able to do for yourself. So the first level that we talk about is independent living. Some people choose to move from a large home into a smaller home, move from a rural community into town, getting an apartment, getting a condo, that kind of thing, so that they can stay independent, make their own decisions, and take care of things themselves. Now, I know that you're also familiar with some of the continuing care communities that have different levels of care within the same community, independent, assisted, and skilled care. Can you talk a little bit about what that means? What is a continuing care community? What are the levels of care? What
are all those terms mean? And it is a little confusing for people, as you know. There are so many terms out there that define senior housing. So trying to figure out what is best for you in particular, as we've talked about, is first of all getting a good handle on what these terms mean. And as you said, Susan, the first one that people always ask me about is independent living. How is that different from assisted living? Or how is a life care community different from assisted living? So we'll start with maybe the life care communities, and otherwise known as continuing care retirement communities. And those are places where they are offering three distinct levels of care. Independent living, assisted living, and usually a skilled nursing facility, all on one campus. And that's a very attractive option for people who are not maybe looking for health care support just at that moment, but want something where they don't have to worry about cooking or cleaning, but they would like options.
Well, I think also one of the things that we've talked about a lot on this show is the importance of social connecting. And a lot of the life care communities that I know have a very big social component. There are other people to eat dinner with. There are classes that go on that campus. So there are a lot of things to keep you active and engaged and connecting with other people, which helps keep your memory sharp, helps keep you socially engaged and healthy.
Yes, and I think you'll find that in assisted living as well, but the continuing care retirement concept was originated for people who are a little younger, who wanted to move out of, as you said, the big house. Who wanted to give up all those household chores, but we're looking into the future. Assisted living.
It seems to me that one of the reasons that people choose to go to a life care community is that it feels more like it's just one move. You move to that community and then all of your needs are met through the rest of your life is the concept. So that you might have to move from one part of the community to another, but you're still there with the friends that you've made or the friends that you joined there, and you don't have to make another big move to a whole new community. Is that what you hear also?
Yes, that is exactly right. And I can say that the continuing care concept is very attractive and it's still very popular among many elderly people. However, there's the other side. There are people who would like to stay home longer. And so assisted living becomes a very attractive option for people who need a little more support. Perhaps something has happened medically or physically to them where they're not able to take care of their day-to-day activities. And so the assisted living option combines independent living with assistance, all under the same roof.
So it would be assistance, I mean, they get their meals and that kind of thing, but they can prepare small things on their own. But you get meals taken care of, laundry,
Right.
right?
There's a whole
Housekeeping, all of those are included
right.
within the assisted living community, but you can have assistance with what kinds of things? Let's talk about some of the kinds of things that
Okay.
people get assistance with.
Sure. Many people find that they would like assistance taking their medications. That's very popular among the elderly, and so
And one of the toughest things, I talked to someone yesterday who was on 16 different medications. So
Right.
keeping track
Keeping
of all
track.
that, and knowing the right time of day and which ones, and
Sure. And so medication management is one of the most common features of an assisted living facility. And then, of course, having all of your meals prepared. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I should add, are included in one monthly fee.
okay.
Now, in terms of the health care also, some people just need a little bit of assistance, maybe bathing or getting the shower water prepared, or maybe getting dressed because they're arthritic, or help with maybe getting the toothpaste on the toothbrush because they may have macular degeneration. So somebody with a vision or hearing loss, they find this a very supportive yet independent lifestyle because you do have your own private apartment, and yet outside your door are home health aides, assistants, there's a communal dining service, and so you really have the best of both worlds, privacy of your own apartment blended with the support when and if you need it.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that apartment, because I think that's one of the things that people who have never visited an assisted living don't understand. So when they see a building, they know it's a senior housing, what comes to mind is a nursing home. And my experience has been that an assisted living apartment looks very different from a skilled
Yes.
care facility. So let's talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, absolutely, Susan, you're right. It's what I spend my days trying to convince people over the phone. So what I tell them is the best way to find out what an assisted living apartment looks like is to, of course, check out as many as possible and take a tour. The best way to do that is just to really look in your local area and see what's available, and just drop by and say you'd like to see a few of the model apartments. I think you will be, most people are very pleasantly surprised because residents bring their own furniture. You have a choice of a studio, which is a one large room, or a one bedroom apartment, which is a bedroom and a separate living room, private bathroom, or a two bedroom. So they're quite spacious. They've come a long way since they were developed in maybe 10, 15 years ago. They're very residential-like. So I tell families it's more of a senior apartment building so that they have that frame of mind coming in, and yet we have a dining room or a restaurant and then a wellness center or a healthcare center on site. So once they see it and meet the other residents, I think that whole nursing home concept really goes away.
Well, I've been on the end of helping people choose what things they want to take with them, and I think they're often surprised that what you need to furnish a one-bedroom, two-bedroom apartment, you really can take a lot of the essentials. A living room, you can have your own private living room to entertain friends and so on, but there are also activities, right?
Yes.
So let's talk some, because I think that's, again, something that distinguishes assisted living from living independently in the community. I mean, I know that some of the continuing care communities also have activities, but my experience is that the activities in an independent living community are often more resident generated. So the residents come up with the ideas, the residents plan a lot of them, the residents plan the trips, and they're supported by the staff. But I think in assisted living, they're more staff generated. Am I right?
Well, actually, it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Resident council meets monthly. So there is a core group of residents, usually in assisted living, who are very vocal and who do have preferences for social activities such as trips, movies, going to museums or concerts. And they do have a lot of input into who comes to the building. So we're starting a lecture series, and I think a lot of assisted living facilities are discovering that the residents really, they do have preferences, and they certainly should be a part of that development of the activities calendar. Trips are a big part of it. We do take people out to lunch. Which is another
part. You know, you go out.
Yeah, we go out. And again, assisted living has come a long way, differentiates us from a nursing home, where you have a combination of independent people, and then, yes, you have people who are using wheelchairs, some are using walkers, and yet everybody lives together and has their own plan of care. That's the other thing. There are home health aides around the clock, 24 hours a day. So that's the nice, comforting part of an assisted living facility, is that when and if you need help, you just really are pressing your lifeline pendant, and someone is there for you. So.
So we've talked about activities, we've talked about food, we talked about trips. What, in assisted living, what happens when someone needs to go out to a doctor's appointment or
Okay,
something?
that's a good question.
Because I think, the other thing I'm aware of from doing caregiver support groups is a lot of adult children caregivers or spouse caregivers are really straining their resources to try to manage their own families, their jobs, and also provide enough care for mom and dad. So some of those things like taking someone to doctor's appointments, to physical therapy, can be a challenge.
Yes, absolutely. And in most senior housing, whether it be the continuing care retirement facility or a life care community or assisted living, there's usually doctors on site. And so the idea is that you don't want to have to make these trips out. You'd like to offer as many health services on site as possible. So at Buckingham, for example, and most other assisted living facilities, you'll find a doctor who comes and visits, usually a geriatrician, who will be available for primary care doctor, for their primary care.
Is that a choice? Do people
Yes.
choose that doctor or to keep their own? Or?
Thank you. Yes, that's a good question. It is available. The doctor is available, and it certainly is the family's choice. If they choose to use that doctor, is their decision. There are a lot of visiting doctors we're finding now whose primary practice is actually going to people's homes. And so since assisted living is considered your home, we have reached out to many of those visiting doctors. So we have quite a few from which to choose in terms of geriatricians, which are internal medicine doctors who treat mainly the elderly, as you know. We also provide podiatry services to the residents. So yet again, they don't have to go out for these things. And it's a very common need. People need to have their feet taken care of, and so we have 3 that come to our building. The other health provider that we have is audiologists that come visit. Some assisted living facilities have opticians that come to check eyes, ophthalmologists. But basically those are the core 3, podiatry, internal medicine, and hearing.
Okay. I want to go back. We sort of jumped into the assisted living. We'll jump around, so I hope people can bear with us. But the other option that some people explore for independent living is senior housing complexes, active adult communities.
Okay.
And so, we're familiar with the continuing care that has all the levels of care, but another option is also active adult communities. Active adult communities include usually a townhouse, apartment, or villa, and they're often centered around a clubhouse, sometimes around tennis or golf or a pool or something like that. But in those communities, and I think they work like condos where the outside of your house, the grounds are taken care of, but you're responsible for your own home. You buy your own home or rent your own home. But people who live in those communities don't have the services that we've just been talking about. There isn't someone who schedules a doctor or schedules an exercise class or those kinds of things. There aren't any meals taken care of. So if you're living in a retirement community like that, an active adult community, you really need to be able to handle your own transportation, your own care. You may hire it in. You may have a home care person come in, but those things are not included the way that they are in assisted living.
Yes, you're right. I guess a good example might be, people may be familiar with the townships in Monroe Township, the adult communities. And so,
very popular.
Right. Rossmore, Concordia, Clearbrook, and then in West Windsor Village, Grand. And those, I think, people move to those, just like you said, to avoid the upkeep of the exterior of the home, the lawn service. And most people have moved from the large home, maybe early retirees, people who've just retired or still working, who just really don't want the upkeep.
And I meet people too. The kids are gone.
Right.
We don't need as much space, and we want to travel more, or we want to be involved in volunteering. So we don't want our lives to be wrapped up around taking care of this home.
And I guess the nice thing about those places are, you know, you're usually with people of your own generation. I think there's a restriction on children living there, so hence the 55 and older. And so they are a very popular option for people who are downsizing from the large house.
Right.
And you're right.
One partner needs to be 55 or older. So
that's right.
Yeah, we
there's
do
a
have
caveat.
Yeah.
Well,
but it's not a community with little kids riding tricycles or teenage kids coming and
That's
going.
exactly right. And as you said, you can certainly stay there for the duration of your life if you are willing and able to hire home care as your needs change, as you progress in your life. So many people are availing themselves to home health care because they just don't want to leave their home, whether it be the old home, the house that you've lived in your whole life, or your whole married life, or a 55 and older community. So that's the other nice option, is that there are choices out there for people.
Right. And I think that your colleague Sharon was on a couple of months ago talking about adult day programs, which Buckingham offers and other people in the area offer, as a way, if there's a couple or a person living in independent living but who begins to have dementia, needs to have activities, structured activities during the day. It's a way of, again, providing services that support them and enable them to stay at home or some of them live with their children, some of them
Right, exactly.
live with a spouse.
That's exactly right. And as you say, having a medical adult day program in the community is helpful, and it can actually be the mechanism by which somebody can stay home. Because if they're living with their spouse, and the spouse obviously can't be there to care for somebody, let's say with Alzheimer's disease, all day long, it's nice for that person to have a place to go that's safe, that provides services, sort of like assisted living services during the day. And yet,
but the person can be back in a familiar surrounding or back with family.
Yeah, later on in the afternoon. And yet you've given the caregiver, the well spouse, as we say, time to do their thing and attend to their errands. So it does enable people to stay independent, I think, a little longer at home.
Right. Now, you mentioned people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and I know that some of the people who live in assisted living do have memory problems, dementia, and that's one of the reasons that their families feel that it's important for them to live in an environment like that where they can have help with those things that are harder for them to do for themselves. Can you talk some about dementia care as compared with the assisted living care for people who, as you say, may have macular degeneration or some other physical problem, but are still mentally sharp and cognitively intact?
That's a good point. Yes, we certainly have people who move in with all kinds of health conditions, chronic conditions, and one of those, of course, is dementia. And Alzheimer's just happens to be one of the more common forms of dementia, as we know. And so as someone's dementia or memory loss progresses, they really do need a safe environment. It might be dangerous for them to be living at home if they decide that they are going to leave the house and start walking down the street, which is could be a symptom of Alzheimer's. So that's usually when someone, that's a red flag, I would say, for someone to consider a more secured option. So in assisted living facilities, most of them in New Jersey and nationwide have units that are designed for people with memory impairment. And they're secured units, meaning you have to have a code to come in and out. So it's safe for the people who are living there, and they can wander freely, whether it's on the first floor with an outdoor garden or in another floor in a building.
There's
families-
freedom of movement within the unit.
Correct. And yet the apartments are fairly independent. They're exactly the same size as the assisted living studios. They do come usually furnished with a kitchenette, private bathroom. So they're very nice and spacious, and I think people are very pleasantly surprised to know that they don't have to go to a nursing home if they have Alzheimer's disease.
That's really important for people to know,
right.
that you don't have to be in that skilled nursing.
Right.
So let's talk about why would a person need skilled nursing then? I mean, we've got all these other options. When does a person need to go into skilled care?
Well, that's a good question. Assisted living can provide, as long as in the assisted living environment you can provide the care for somebody safely and appropriately in their own apartment, then there's very few reasons why someone really needs to move out. The regulations do say if you are bedridden for more than 2 weeks, or if you develop pressure to, I think, bed sores, if they're swallowing issues, or if there are feeding tube or someone's on a trach, there's a lot of skilled needs that we don't
So
handle.
skilled really is the word there, isn't
Skilled,
it? Because
yes.
if you need skilled nursing, because the kind of assistance that you get in assisted living is not all provided by skilled nurses.
No, that's correct.
And so a nursing home is when a person needs that kind of more intensive medical care. If they're going through rehab, coming out of a hospitalization, recovering from a surgery, or broken bones, those kinds of things, often spend time in a rehab or in a skilled nursing facility on their way back into more independence.
Right.
But it's often when there's that kind of skilled nursing care of wounds, care of equipment.
Yes, and
or
you know,
transfers.
I should say we can do wound care in assisted living as well. We do have arrangements with certain professional skilled nurses that do come in and handle those things. And also, I should say, in assisted living we do offer hospice care. So somebody can certainly stay in assisted living for the remainder of their life. It's not always a certainty that you are going to have to go to a nursing home.
That's really important to understand,
Yes,
because some
and-
people worry about that. Well, if I bring mom to this assisted living, is this only going to be temporary and then we have to step on? And it's certainly something I've seen in the time that I've worked. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Right.
That assisted livings have really expanded.
We have expanded
The care
the
that
level
they
of
can give.
care, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of creativity with the nursing staff. So that's something people should be aware of, is when they are visiting, to of course meet with the nursing staff, and that's one of the key aspects of entrance of criteria for entering assisted living. Is there's always a nursing assessment to find out if the facility can safely meet the needs of that prospective resident.
Now, one of the questions that comes up a lot is, can you try it out? People worry, they've heard somewhere along the line about great big upfront fees and having to sell their homes and all this kind of stuff. So let's talk about fees and about whether you can try it out. Okay,
that's a good question. Yes, you can try it out first. We start there. In really any senior housing, well, especially assisted living, there is an option to try it out first, whether it be from a week to 2 months. And that is a nice option for someone who just wants to get their feet wet and know that if it doesn't work out or they don't care for that lifestyle, that they can go home. We do provide furnished apartments for people who are also coming out of a rehab setting, like you said, who just need a little more assistance before they go home to their home in the community. So you can take advantage of this short-term or respite stay, or try it out before you make a decision.
Respite stays are such a godsend to some families. I mean, there are a lot of families that are multi-generation families, but then the younger part of the family want to go on a vacation, want to go to a family wedding, and it's too stressful for the older parent to go along. So a respite stay is a great way to try it out, but also to know that mom or dad are going to be taken care of while you
are doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. And now the fee structure, we should back up with continuing care retirement facilities. There is an entrance fee. Many people have probably heard about that. And it can range from anywhere from about $100,000 to $200,000. And that entrance fee, in addition to a monthly fee, you do pay a small monthly fee, and that's typically $1,000 to $2,000 a month. The entrance fee is like a sort of an insurance policy. It guarantees your stay in that facility, and there are different types of refundable entrance fees, whether they amortize them monthly so that there is something refunded when the person leaves. But that entrance fee really goes toward offsetting the cost of nursing home care if and when they need that in the future. So it acts like an insurance policy. And it's a good idea, but it's not for everybody. So therefore, the difference between, let's say, assisted living and that model is assisted living is a month-to-month rental. You do sign a yearly lease, and there is an annual increase, as there are with many places. And it's usually about 5%, 4 to 5%. It's tied to the Consumer Price Index. But at least it's a simple month-to-month rental. So people like that. They don't have to pay a huge amount of money up front.
And I know that some assisted livings, it's important for people to read the contracts when you go to a place and understand what you're really in for, because of those. Some have entrance fees, some don't. Some have monthly fees, some have additional fees for fee for service, for additional services, so that or for different levels of care, right? So that you need to know, is my parent being admitted with very few services included, and then as the need grows, that fee is going to climb because we now need someone to come and help with medication. We now need someone to come and help with getting undressed at night. Right.
Exactly. Right. So full disclosure is very important, and if people are meeting with entrance or admissions people at these particular facilities, you definitely want to ask about fees, and you should read the contract or go through with the person that you're dealing with. But the assessment with the nurse is the time where you will find out how much extra or additional services will cost, and that plus the monthly fee. You should have this all in writing first and ask questions if you don't understand it, and just be aware that there are certain fees, but I think most places are very upfront about their fees, because you certainly don't want to surprise anybody. That's the worst thing that can happen, so you've got a surprise $500 extra, but yeah, that's how we do it.
Let me ask one more question as we wrap up, and that is, sometimes you have two parents who need help. Are there accommodations made? Is it possible for two people to move in, a couple to move into assisted living and to live in the same apartment?
Yes.
Even if they're at different
levels. Okay. That's a very good question. We do. We're seeing more and more couples moving in where one spouse is perhaps healthier than the other, and as you said, the other spouse needs more assistance. Maybe they have a health issue, or they need more help than the spouse can really help them with. It could be a very, a husband who needs help with bathing or dressing, and the wife is no longer able to handle that at home. So when they do move in, yes, the home health aide will assist the husband, and the wife can relax and know that we're taking care of her husband while she does her thing.
Because I think that's very reassuring to people. So, Hillary, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope we've demystified some of the senior housing options for folks. And if you have further questions, I hope you'll get in touch with either Hillary or myself at the Princeton Senior Resource Center. Our contact information will be up at the end of the show. So, Hillary, thank you very much for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you, Susan.